Today I'm going to be showing you guys what is by far the easiest trading method that is out there, but whether or not we can actually class it as a trading method is something I'll have to get into a little bit later on in this video. But today's video is all about laying 0-0. Now you might be sat there thinking that sounds like the easiest thing going. You're going to lay a game being 0-0 and then a second a goal goes in, regardless of who it's for, regardless of what minute, you then take away a profit. Surely there's not going to be a big enough margin there. And don't worry, we're definitely going to be getting into that. But for those of you who are completely new to Betfair trading, what I'd recommend you do is go back and watch all the other videos I've got on this channel. You might find a strategy there that you prefer more than this one, because I'd always recommend you focusing on one strategy, get that perfected before you then try and bring in loads more strategies to your portfolio. But whilst you're at the channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and the like button too. And I encourage all of you who are already subscribed, please hit that like button. Hitting the like button makes a huge difference and it brings more people to the channel. The more people who come to the channel, the more strategies will get recommended and the more videos I'll be able to push out to you guys. But if you are completely new to Betfair trading and you don't even know what I mean when I say laying a 0-0, it is very simple. When you lay something, you're essentially betting on that not to happen. So you're betting on all the other outcomes available apart from the one you've selected. So if you laid a 0-0, you're saying on your bet that there will be any other scoreline available. So as long as there's a goal going in, you're going to make a profit. So let's go over to Betfair and I'll show you guys just how much money you can make doing this strategy. So as you can see, today there are a few games on. If I go down to, let's say, the Celtic game, I'd assume this one would not be 0-0, but obviously you need to do a bit more research behind these games to make sure that you can be a bit more confident when you put your bet on. You're then going to come down to the correct score market. You'll see all the correct scores down here, and as you can see, we just need to load up the 0-0 market here and lay the odds. So it's already at 12 odds at the moment, which is quite high for any sort of market that you'd be looking into. And let's say you wanted to make £50 off this trade. So if we put in £50 in the lane market, you can see that to make £50 or £49 after the commission's been taken out, you would need to put up £550 worth of liability. Now looking at that, you're probably thinking the risk to reward there is not level, it does not match out. But all I'm going to say in regards to that is, recently I've been learning some tennis trading, and although tennis trading the majority of the time does bring you in quite a bit more profit than £50 for £500 worth of liability, sometimes it can be very similar to this. And this laying 0-0 strategy, although it is very liability intensive, you do need to put a lot of money up there to get a notable profit, you are still making a nice 10% profit on your trade, which isn't too bad. You're not making a mad amount, but obviously if the game does go on further and stays at 0-0 for a longer period of time, you're going to start losing a bit of money. But when you look at the stats for 0-0s, if we look at last season, for example, in the Premier League, 7% of games ended 0-0. That means 93% of the games, if you'd have put this on, you would have won. Which essentially means 353 of the 380 games ended with at least one goal, meaning there is a huge potential out there for you to make some good profit from this strategy. Obviously the strategy is a bit iffy because if you lose once you could lose quite a big chunk of money, but as always when it comes to football trading, you will have quite a bit of liability in the trades, but you will not ever hopefully lose that whole liability unless you just completely forget about the game or you're just going to stick with the trade until the final whistle. But this is where this gets a little bit interesting, because if you're going to stick with the trade until the final whistle, regardless, and never cash out of your trade, you might genuinely be better off just putting a bet over on the bookmakers, because whilst you're laying the 0-0, you are also essentially, if we go over to the over-under markets over here, you're essentially just backing the over 0.5 goals market, because backing the over 0.5 goals market means you're expecting at least one goal in the game. any goal, any team, any point in the game, and that bet comes in just as often as laying the 0-0 because they're essentially the same bet. Now, if you are being a bit more cautious with your money and you're wanting to trade out at some points and not risk your whole stake, then it is definitely better to use Betfair or another exchange because you can watch the price as it happens, you can watch the game, you can reflect in the market whether or not you want to start getting out, and you will already have a position in your head of your exit ready for if the game stays 0-0 longer than you expected. But if you're happy to sit on it for the whole game, never cash out, leave it till the final whistle and hope a goal comes late on if one hasn't come already, then you would be better off going to a bookmaker's and putting a bet on the over 0.5 goal market. And the reason behind that is, if you can get better odds on a bookmaker or even very similar odds, you will not have to pay commission on a bookmaker's site. So you're already there getting a bigger profit than you would have done over on Betfair. The real question then, is this strategy profitable long term? I've saw quite a few people online over the past few days who've said this strategy is not profitable long term. And in a way, I completely disagree with them. As long as you put in the research behind the games, you should not have a problem when it comes to using the laying 0-0 strategy. All you're waiting for is a goal. It is essentially the same as the laying the draw strategy, except your entrance to the market is a lot later on in the game because you're waiting for the right odds. But with the laying the 0-0 strategy, you can get in before kickoff. I could get in with this Celtic Midtjylland game right now if I wanted to and put the bet straight on for laying the 0-0. It is completely up to you when you go in and go out, but obviously make sure you've got your specific point in mind so you don't end up losing your whole stake. Is it scalable then? Can you do this with a lower budget? Yeah, you can. If you wanted to do this and just make a £10 profit, for example, you could go in with £110. Like I said, it roughly works out as 10% for this trade because it is 12 on the odds. Whether or not you think it's worth it, putting in that £110, potentially risking £60, £70 depending on when you leave the market, just for a £9.80 profit is another question. But if the games are unbalanced, or the teams are unbalanced I should say, like this game, you should expect quite a few goals. All you need is one, and then you've made that profit. This isn't one where you'll have to wait for the goal to go in, then trade your position out, decide whether or not you want to stay in. All you need is that one goal, and then your total profit is already locked in. Now, if you were doing this trade live and a goal goes in, it's not going to instantly give you all the profit into your account because it's still not technically the final score yet. So you will have to wait for the game to be finished before you see that profit. The reason I'm saying this is because during the game, it's going to come up with your current profit and loss throughout the whole game on Betfair, and it will fluctuate massively. Some minutes it'll say you're making a loss, some minutes it'll say you're positive. But if you understand the market, you understand that if you're laying a 0-0, if a goal's gone in, you've got your guaranteed profit there ready for the end of the game. It's just because the way Betfair works, it will need to wait for the final whistle before it clarifies all the correct score market results. If you were definitely going to use this strategy, then I would have a few recommendations. Firstly, go for games where there is a huge difference in quality between the two teams. You're going to get lower odds, but you're more likely to get that profit. Also, research the opponents. If there is a massive underdog going at the game, they might be very good defensively against the bigger teams. So definitely keep that in mind. Do your research before the game and maybe watch the game for about 5-10 minutes before you decide to get in with the bet. Additionally, like I said earlier on, 7% of the Premier League games last season ended in a 0-0. Other leagues around Europe, you got La Liga, which was also 7%. You got the Bundesliga, which was slightly lower at 5%, and then you have Ligue 1 and the Serie A, which is down at 4%. So it is a very rare occurrence that a game ends in 0-0, but you need to make sure that you don't fall into that occurrence because you will probably lose a lot more than what you expected to even win in the first place. So it's definitely worth doing the research and knowing the sport a little bit yourself as well. But this strategy here is the perfect strategy for beginners. You don't have much to pay attention to. You don't have to trade out of your position later on in the game if a goal's already gone in. And then if it gets to half time, 60th, 70th, 80th minute, and it's still 0-0 and it doesn't look likely that a goal's going in, you can then slowly start to take out your money from the game. It will reduce your potential profit, but also it will get rid of the loss and make sure you don't lose too much money if the game does end up 0-0. So how much profit can you actually make from this? So if we take a look at the Premier League last year, like I said before, there was 350 games where there was a goal in and 30 games where it ended 0-0. If you manage to get the exact same odds as what we have over on this Celtic Michelin game, which obviously would fluctuate from time to time, so don't take this as gospel. There will be occasions where the prices is different, and also there will be quite a few occasions where the prices are just completely different to this. They might be expecting a 0-0 draw, they might be expecting there definitely not to be a 0-0 draw, so just keep that in mind. But if there was to be this exact price available for every single game in the Premier League last season, and you did every single game for the laying 0-0 strategy, you would have made a total profit on the 350 games of £3,430, but then you also need to take into consideration the loss you would have made from the 30 games. Now, to work out the loss for the 30 games, I have decided roughly in the middle that you would probably make an average loss of £75. If you're going in with the liability of 110, you should be looking to only really risk £40 to £50 at most and probably get out of the market. As long as you're not certain the goal's going to go in, probably look to get out of the market around about that point so you don't lose too much money. But I've gone with £75 just to be the most you should have expected to lose. And if that was the case, you would not have lost the £75 on all of the 30 games, but still for this calculation, I'm going to act as if you had. So, £75 loss on every single game that didn't end 0-0. That did end 0-0. You would have made a loss of £2,250, meaning overall you would have made a nice little profit of £1,180. Now, is that worth it? £1,180 over a 10-month season, it's roughly £118 a month. Not a huge deal of income coming in there. And also, to add on to that, you probably wouldn't see that as a steady income stream. You would probably have a few months where you're making a loss, a few months where you're making a profit. But in general, I don't think this is too bad of a nice little strategy to start out with if you're brand new to Betfair trading. I know it can be very middle ground on whether this is a strategy or if this is a bet, but I honestly think the fact that you're going to be keeping an eye on the market, learning how the market goes, it kind of edges it a bit more into the realms of it being a strategy, but I'm sure some of you guys will disagree on that one. It is a fairly simple concept to get your head around. You just need to make sure you execute it properly, otherwise obviously it's not going to be very profitable in the long term. In terms of odds from around the leagues, 7% of games in the Premier League ended 0-0, 7% in La Liga, Bundesliga was 5%, and then over in Ligue 1 and Serie A it was down at 4%. Obviously 0-0s don't happen too often, but you want to make sure you know exactly which games are the right to select for this strategy. So please make sure you do your research. If you've got any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button while you're down there as well. It makes a huge difference. And thank you for watching.